I hope your mind is spinning right now. If the African American community operated like a nation, on the low end, we'd be operating like the country of Mexico. On the high end, at $2 trillion, we should be operating like the country of Italy. The country. The country. That's how much collectively. That's our spending power. Are you all getting this? If these pioneers, if these African Americans in the early 1800s, in the late 1800s, in the early 1900s, if they can create what they created back then, if these pioneers built legacies out and the obstacles they had to navigate, what's stopping us? It's time for us to step into our vision. It's time for us to take control of our future, and it's time for us to stop waiting for permission to succeed. We got everything we need. We got everything we need, and I promise you the only reason we don't have it is because we're not focused.
Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibilities. Find your power, passion, and your purpose. You know it's time for you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Slay your goals, live out your dreams. Right now. Inspiration and perspective. Open your mind to a better life. It's time to live your dream. Your purpose now. Inspiration and perspective. Let's slay your goals.
If you've ever felt like the odds were stacked against you, if you ever felt like there are barriers and obstacles that you have to overcome simply because of the color of your skin or simply because of the environment you grew up in, this show is for you. This show is for you. Okay, the first thing that I want to talk about is how we overcome the change of victimhood. And when I say the change of victimhood, because of the role I played as a coach over the last decade and more, I've come to find out that the main thing that stops people is the story that they tell themselves about themselves. And one of the biggest lies that many of us tell ourselves is that I am a victim. I am at effect of the environment around me. And if you know anything about me, you know that that's just something I don't believe. I don't believe it. And I believe it's one of the biggest inhibitors to our overall success. Now, I believe that one of the major issues that we have as a community is that often we will see obstacles in our path and we will stop and wait for that obstacle to be removed by administration, by our politicians, like the individuals that we vote in. Like we will stop our progress because, oh, look at the obstacle, look at the barrier. Somebody needs to do something about that. And what you're going to learn today is that throughout Black history, the people that we honor, that one of the main things that's different about them is that whenever they saw obstacles, they didn't stop, they strategized. And I really want us to pay attention to that portion. This month we're celebrating, Black history. And the individuals that we look up to in Black history, what I firmly believe is that what we're celebrating is not struggle. We're not celebrating the struggle. What we're celebrating is their strategic vision and their ability to take action despite the odds. That is what we're celebrating. The reason we know who they are, the reason we celebrate these names, the reason these individuals are highlighted when we go through the month of February, year after year after year, is because they had strategic vision and they took action. Right now, I want you to think about anybody that comes to mind when you say Black history. And every last one of them has these two things in common. Every last one of them. Unless there's somebody that we bring up that, is like, I can't think of anyone that we celebrate that did not have strategic vision and was willing, despite the odds, to take action, period. In fact, it makes me think of a quote by Marcus Garvey where he said, if you have no confidence in yourself, you are twice defeated in the race of life. Like Marcus Garvey. And I could hear him saying it. Like, if you have no confidence in yourself, and as he's saying this, he's instructing the members of our community, like, you need to look good when you go out and when you go outside. You need to walk a particular way. You need to hold your head a particular way. Like, the more you learn, like, if you ever read up about Marcus Garvey, like, he was all about confidence. In fact, if you remember those, if you look back at those parades through New York City, like, those brothers and sisters had on uniforms. They were clean. With one of the most famous pictures of Marcus Garvey is him with that feather in his cap, and he was clean himself. And like, when I read this quote, like, that's what comes to mind. If you have no confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. Now, someone may be listening to that right now. They say, man, Linnell, I don't know how to contend with that because my confidence has been shaken. Like, you don't necessarily understand what I've been through in my life and what people have told me and talked about. And what I will tell you is that the one thing that I know on a very personal level, because I completely understand, there was a point in my life where my confidence was shaken too, where I struggled with my confidence because of my upbringing, no different from you. And the beauty about confidence is that confidence is a competence. It is something that you can learn. And Marcus Garvey, like, he showed us that by teaching the brothers and sisters that he came in contact with to be confident. I know for a fact there are people that ran across this man who, before they met him, weren't holding their head up. In fact, like, I really want to put this in perspective, you guys. I really want to put this in perspective. Last night, my wife and I, we went out to dinner. In the restaurant we went into, we were the only. Like this, many of us, you all know how that is. We were the only. And I thought to myself, because this show was on my mind, I'm like, man, there was a time not too long ago where we probably wouldn't be able to eat in this restaurant. Like, we wouldn't be able to, enjoy a date and enjoy this cuisine. We wanted a particular type of cuisine, which is one of the reasons we were the only, okay? But we wanted to enjoy this cuisine. And there was a time where we wouldn't have that choice. And let's say they did let us in. Let's say the owner was a sympathizer of some sort. Let's say we're up north, right here in the city, same city. And the owner is like, we serve everything, like it was progressive in some way, quote unquote liberal, right? And they let us in. There were often times where our grandparents and great-grandparents, even if they were served, weren't safe going to the car because the other patrons would have been upset. They would have had to watch their backs. Like, I mean, this is real. This is real. And you couldn't walk around with too much confidence because that was going to make somebody mad. Who you think you are? What you looking at, boy? Right? And this is real. And so some of what we've learned, some of the things that we're dealing with when it comes to confidence, I want you to consider that has been epigenetically passed down to you through fear of many of the things that we've encountered. And I'm here to tell you, today's a new day. And if there's anything that I want this segment to do, is I want it to wash that off you. I want it to wash it all off you. This is your time. This is your time. And as a community, we can look around at what's happening. We can look around at the current administration and say, oh, my goodness, what are they doing? We can have complaints. Whatever it may be, this is your time to hold your head up and move powerfully. Now, to kick it off, I wanted to define the difference between what I believe is taking full responsibility for yourself, for where it is you intend to go, most importantly, for your vision, in contrast to victimhood. In contrast to when I say, someone is being a victim, what is it that I mean? In contrast to being a victim. Because the thing that concerns me the most about where we are today is that I believe that many of us are acting like victims simply because of what someone said. We're allowing, we're stopping. We're no longer taking action on our vision because of a feeling. And I want you to put this in the context of what you're about to hear. I feel like if I do that, I'm afraid that if I do that. And here are people whose lives were on the line simply for being successful. And they kept pushing so they can make an impact, so they could leave a legacy. And this is why we have the opportunity to talk about them today. This is why we have the opportunity to celebrate them today. A person who is fully responsible, they focus on the solution. There's a framework that I share with Slayer Goals members halfway through the year. One of the things we talk about is where are you focused? Are you focused on the area of influence, or are you focused on the area of concern? Even right now, we had a show a bit after the election, and most of what I heard was focused on the area of concern, not on the area of influence. And by the way, I wish I could take credit for that, but that comes from The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, written by Stephen Covey. One of the things he talks about in this particular chapter is that most people who are not successful, one of the reasons they're not successful is because of the amount of energy they place on the areas of concern, the things that concern me, versus taking that energy and effort and that mental, because by the way, thinking that takes up energy. So taking that mental energy and placing it into the things that they can actually influence. And so when you think about someone who has a vision mindset, a responsibility mindset, they're focused on solutions. They're focused on possibilities and the possibilities of the outcomes that can happen if they take action. They're focused on what actions they can take that will actually get them closer to their destination. That's an individual who has a responsibility and vision mindset. Now, a person who has a victim mindset, a person who is at effect of their environment, one of the things that they focus on is all the obstacles. They can clearly articulate to you everything that is in their way, everything that is slowing them down, every limitation that they have. Well, when I went to school, I didn't study the right thing. Or, they can break down all the reasons why they can't do what it is that they were designed to do by the Creator. All the limitations, and more often than not, they're blaming someone. Well, if we had a different president, I might be able to. Like they're blaming someone. Well, you know, if we had a different mayor, then we probably could. Well, you know, if I had a different alderman, I wouldn't be. And it's like the blame is everywhere. Well, you know, my mama is this way and that way. And by the way, they have children of their own. Right. Well, you know, the way my kids act or the way, you know, like if my son had done this or my daughter hadn't done that, then I would be able to. Oh, if they hadn't, it's everybody else's fault. Now, just take a minute, because I believe awareness is one of the most powerful tools. And just ask yourself, where are you? And by the way, all of us are likely in one of those two spaces in different areas of our lives. When it comes to my work, I show up with that vision and responsibility mindset. But when it comes to my relationship, I'm a victim. Oh, if she would just. Oh, if he would just, right? If he didn't, if she didn't, then I would be able to. You know, like, oh, if you're blaming, you're a victim. I can promise you that. One of the highlights we did was on a gentleman named Philip Payton Jr. And what I love about this man was that when he moved to Harlem, Harlem was closed to black families. And when he saw that black folks couldn't move into Harlem, he didn't see an obstacle. He saw an opportunity. And one of the things that I talk about on the Instagram reel where we highlight him, and by the way, you can follow me at Linnell Harris to check out these videos. But on the Instagram reel when we highlight him, one of the things he realized is that white landlords, they were so racist that they would be willing for the building to be empty, for it to be maybe half occupied. Like they were willing to be struggling with the mortgage of this property than to let black folk in. And so he's watching this and he goes, oh man, there's an opportunity here because they're not going to be able to hold this property down. And if I'm strategic, if I do this properly, I can buy up most of Harlem. And if I get a building right in the middle of all these white landlords and I start moving black folks in, they're going to all sell. And I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be ready to scoop up all this property and all this real estate. Now, I can imagine that before Philip A. Payton came along, that a lot of black folk, so-called black folk, would be around Harlem, maybe even try to apply for an apartment in Harlem. And when they were denied or when they were told or maybe they were called the N-word, get out of here, whatever it may be, they walked away dejected with their heads down. And they felt victimized. And here's a man who went through the same process and walked away with a light bulb over his head. Now, hold on now. This is a good thing. And I'm sharing this because the law of polarity states, one of the 12 universal laws, one of God's laws, the law of polarity states that in every situation and circumstance, if there's a downside, there's an upside. Now, just sit with that for a moment. Like if there's a downside, that means there's an upside. And how often, and this is why I always say, man, these laws are working whether you're working or not. Like whether you know them or not, these laws are working. And here comes along Philip A. Payton Jr., and he sees the upside. And the same thing that many of the brothers and sisters around him hadn't seen. And he didn't just accept discrimination as a permanent reality. He began to strategize a way to move it forward. Now, do you remember, Ade? Like, because I want to get the time frame here. Let me see. I want to get the time frame here. Because I think the time frame that this brother was doing what he did is really, really important. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pull it up, or you see if you can pull it up before me. But I want to get, let me see. I want to get the time frame here because I think the time frame that this brother was doing what he did is really, really important. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pull it up, or you see if you could pull it up before me. But I want to get, let me see. I want to get the time frame here because I think the time frame that this brother was doing what he did is really, really important. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pull it up, or you see if you could pull it up before me. But I want to get The time frame. Here we go, right here. I think I got it. Yeah. I think I got it here. I think I got the link. Because I want the time frame. Because I want us to consider like what was happening during this period. So we're looking at he was born in 1876. Because I think we need the context sometimes. So this brother was born in 1876. It's 100 years before I was born. And by the time, let's see, he went to Harlem. He went to Harlem after moving to New York. He moved to New York with $10 in his pocket. He became a barber. He was a handyman and a porter. And he was also a janitor at a real estate office. And that's when he had this. And I really, because here's the thing. The way the Creator works is sometimes, so the brother was a barber. He was a handyman and he was a porter. And I don't know the specifics of his story, like all the way down to the details of each of those jobs. You know, history doesn't tell us that. But I imagine that when he's cleaning up this real estate office, he is not as good as cutting brother's hair. Like you get where I'm going? Like something happened. Like, you know, like he wasn't cutting it as, you know, like he wasn't cutting it as a barber, or maybe he didn't have the clientele because he was new to New York. And so now he's got to push a broom. And by the way, back then, that wasn't it wasn't a bad job for a brother. So he's pushing a broom in a real estate office. And some of us would just put our heads down and sweep the floors and do what we got to do. And every day, you know, kind of say, how was it? It's a good day. Come home, have a drink, whatever, do it the same thing. But I imagine this brother, while he's sweeping the floor, he's looking around. And he sees, you know, little schematics of where they intend to build next. Maybe he sees like, okay, these properties are for sale, and he's paying attention. You know what makes you pay attention? Last week, we talked about the reticular activating system, and that whatever your vision is, it begins to show you how you can create that vision. And I believe this brother had a vision like, man, I ain't going to be pushing brooms. And then all of a sudden he saw opportunity through his reticular activating system based on how he chose to focus. And I want to be clear. If you choose victimhood, all you will see is more people to blame. All you will see is more obstacles. All you will see is more barriers. But when you choose vision, you'll begin to see the solutions. You'll begin to see how you can begin to create something that not only impacts you, but impacts others. 1904. In 1904, this brother founded the Afro-American Realty Company. This is 1904. Anybody want to tell me what was happening to black folk in 1904? I'm going to pause. See, because we'll sit up and really believe that my situation, my circumstance is different from Linnell. Doesn't understand. Like if he really understood what was going on for me, you know, he wouldn't talk like that at me. But I want us to put ourselves in the context of what this brother had to endure in 1904 when he started his company. I can imagine, see, because now we can start a company online. I can imagine just him going down to the municipality building to start his company. He encountered racism. What you want, boy? Well, I'd like to get an application to start my LLC. What you doing? You ain't gonna do nothing. Can you see? We putting this all out of context. 1904. Do you think it was simple? Some of us we encounter resistance just signing on to Cyber Drive, Illinois. If you're in Illinois, I meant to do it. I was gonna do it. I'm so busy. And here, this brother, like, and I just want to get into the context a bit. Like, because I imagine he probably had to go a couple of times just to make it happen. And I'm sure at every step as he began to build out his business model, he ran into resistance. In fact, part of the story says when white property owners threatened him, he persisted. Like when he got threatened, he persisted. Do you think he was afraid? Sometimes walking down the street in Harlem, looking at these buildings, do you think he had like maybe a little fear? I believe he did. But courage is taking action in the face of fear. And I'm saying this because most of us are navigating stories, not real and present fear. Where you're walking down the street and everybody's staring at what is he doing over here? And he's looking at the building trying to see, am I going to purchase this? Is this good frame? This got good bones? What you doing over here, boy? Y'all follow? If you don't get out of here, something's going to happen to you. Him ignoring them. No, I'm buying this up. Eventually, y'all won't be here. Vision. 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 When he started, Harlem was closed to black families. When he finished, Harlem was going through a renaissance, the black renaissance. There's a quote from Rosa Parks where she says, I've learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. And what I like to say, because I believe fear is always there, that I've learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, courage begins to seep into their heart, where the fears don't matter. I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it anyway. I think of the stories that we talked about this year, Mary Ellen Pleasance was one of my favorites because she was born into slavery. Imagine going from being owned to becoming a secret financial powerhouse that owns almost everything. Like, so just just sit with that. Like, imagine being owned. Like you're someone else's property. And your vision is so clear, so powerful, that you believe you can go from being owned to owning everything you want to put your hand to. And not only that, there are no examples. See, there's a difference. Now today, we can look at different African Americans and say, well, that brother did it. I can do it. But here's a woman where there are no examples of African American women, so-called black women in that time, who had risen to that level of wealth and power. There are no examples. The only example she had was in her mind. Mary Ellen Pleasant, part of how she was able to learn how to become wealthy and get wealthy is she used the fact that she would go unseen, dressing like a servant, as she served wealthy people in San Francisco, listening to the conversations, ear hustling, listening to what they were investing in, taking her the few dollars that she was making, the few cents that she was making, and then taking that and investing it based on what she heard at those tables. You know what happens for most of us? I don't have enough to invest. Like, and I just want you, like, here's a woman who's serving. So you know she wasn't getting paid well. And the little bit she was making, she was willing to take portions of that and say, I heard them talking about they putting this money in this index or this gold or whatever it might be. I'm going to slide a little bit into it. And then she pull it out and reinvest it. And then slowly became a powerhouse. There's one part of the story where there's a meeting that she wants to be in. And I imagine the financial elites in San Francisco, they're going to sit up, they're going to talk, as they do, about how to make money. And she needs to be in this meeting. But one, she's a woman. Two, she's a sister. Like she can't just walk in and sit down. And so what she does is she dresses up like one of the servants. And she serves the man at this meeting while she's listening to what she needs to learn to invest the money that she has. As a matter of fact, this woman goes from being a slave. She goes from being a slave, and I'm trying to look at, and by the way, she was born into slavery in 1814. I'm putting this in perspective, man. So she's doing this in the 1800s. I just want to know, what excuses, like, what have you been telling yourself why you can't? Oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. She gains her freedom and then goes to San Francisco, where she builds an empire that is hiding in plain sight. And while working as a cook and a housekeeper, she's gathering valuable investment tips from wealthy men that she's serving. Until the point where she starts orchestrating her own business deals. Hey, I can imagine her talking to the few people that will listen. Hey, I was in there, I heard this. If you move your money over here and move your money over there, then we can do this. Then the next thing she does, she starts opening restaurants. She's got restaurants. She's got laundry services. She's got boarding houses. She's got real estate investments in San Francisco in the 1800s. And she builds an investment portfolio that would be worth millions and millions in today's money. Then, after she makes the money, she then turns to create legacy by using that money to fight for the civil rights of the community. In fact, there was a time in San Francisco where black people can ride the streetcars. And so she sued the city and won. And won. Many of us, we will look at the circumstance of our birth and say, well, I'm doing pretty good for where I am now. My dad grew up in Cabrini Green. You know, I would say there's a point where once I made it to corporate America, I could have said, well, you know, based on our family, based on where we come from, Dad, Cabrini Green, now I'm in corporate America, we're doing pretty good. Where this woman says, nah, it's not going to be just about getting a home and being free. It's not going to be just about, you know, making ends meet. But I'm going to build an empire that then can give back to others. Her mansion eventually became known as Black City Hall because this was a place where black entrepreneurs could go to find support and guidance. Like, that's purpose. That's purpose. That's purpose. Sometimes I feel like we believe we need to be seen. You may walk into spaces where nobody recognizes you. That don't mean that you can't be the wealthiest one. They don't got to see you. They don't got to acknowledge you. I can imagine Mary Ellen Pleasant moved around, and many times she would be in spaces where she was more wealthy than most of the people sitting down, and she was still willing to serve to get the tips, to get those financial tips. She was still willing to go unseen before legacy based on purpose. Like, what can we take from this? Last week, we talked about the faith formula and the idea that belief is the foundation of action, and that without belief, vision is impossible. And I think the thing that Mary Ellen Pleasant shows us is that when you believe in something greater and you act on it, anything is possible. Anything is possible. And that's why I like the context of the time frame. Early 1800s. We ain't talking like, early 1900s. We're talking early 1800s. And I think this goes to another quote by Alice Walker. Alice Walker said the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. I love that quote. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Well, Linnell, I don't have a form like you. Well, I can't really. Yeah, okay. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Man, I'm going to put it like this. If you want to win in life, sometimes all you got to do is look at those who won before you. And they had to surmount odds well beyond the odds that many of us have to fight for. Like well beyond. Here's one of the other things, and I think you hear this often, like even if it comes to black people, well, we don't get, we can't walk into a bank like them. We can't, we will focus on so many of the obstacles. Like we can't just, leverage and create businesses, and we can't get the same seed money. And we'll hear all the complaints. And I'm telling you that in every place where there is difficulty, because of the law of polarity, there's an opportunity to switch our thinking and see the opportunity. So Frederick Patterson, this brother, now we moved up. I'm gonna go back to time frame, because now with Frederick Patterson, the time frame is he was born in 1871. And by the way, I told the team when we were investigating people to highlight from Black history, I was like, nobody after the Civil Rights Movement, nobody after affirmative action. Like nobody, because these things, they took it away. What are we going to do? Well, there's examples. There are examples of people who, in a time frame where they shouldn't have been successful, were incredibly successful. So C.R. Patterson, Frederick's father, he's born in 1871. And then comes along his son, and he had a carriage business. So, C.R. Patterson had a carriage business, and, he has a family, and him and his son, they can see that, hey, man, these carriages are going out of style. Like, things are changing. And in 1915, this is the same time that Henry Ford was making headlines. Patterson was making history, too, because they became the first and only Black-owned automobile manufacturer in American history. And here's the thing. They realized, wait a second. We can't go up against Henry Ford's money and his manufacturing output, right? Because remember, this is like the industrial age is booming. They got the lines going. Henry Ford's got all the financing, right? He's got all this going on. And they're like, we can't necessarily go head to head with this guy. But what if we built vehicles that were high quality for wealthy people? Like, what if we did that? And before you know it, their vehicles start picking up steam. But then, Henry Ford, again, their major competitor, is able to put out better quality vehicles faster and cheaper. And so they say, okay, you know what? We'll pivot. And I want to be very clear, because right away they could have felt victimized. This man has more money. He has more output. The vehicles are cheaper. But if you focus on the problem, all you will see are the problems. When you focus on vision and opportunity, what you will see are opportunities. They're like, well, Ford, he's not building buses. He's not building delivery vehicles. And so they reached out to major companies. They say, this is what we can do for you. And they started building buses. They started building delivery vehicles. They started building specialized vehicles for the needs of different companies and kept the business going. I would imagine that Henry Ford saw them and was like, we need to create a van. Like, now he's copying off of their innovation. Sometimes the boldest moves are the moves that absolutely transform our legacies. And I believe that innovation is not just about keeping up. And I believe many of us, the big mistake that we make, especially those of us who are entrepreneurs, the big mistake that we make is we're focused on keeping up rather than seeing ahead. What's coming? Where should I be focused? What's coming next? Like, one of the reasons I've talked so much about AI is because that's one of the areas I'm like, here's what's coming next. How do we get ahead? If you want to change your life, the first step is to change how you see yourself. I kicked it off with Marcus Garvey. If you missed the first hour, I gave you the Marcus Garvey quote. If you have no confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. And what he was saying there is like, look, think about the context of the time, right? Hey, they already don't have confidence in you, so that's one defeat. At a minimum, you should have confidence in yourself so you don't suffer the second defeat. If you want to change your life, the first step is to change how you see yourself. I think this is a great segue into Maggie Lena Walker. First black woman to own a bank before any woman ever owned a bank and before any woman could even vote. They couldn't even cast a vote. See, what's limiting us is our ability to see our own possibilities. That's it. That's what's limiting us. So this woman had a vision for economic ownership, the power of economic ownership in the black community. And she didn't wait around for a black man to see it. She didn't say, well, I guess I got to get married to somebody that thinks this way. Does my husband think, she was like, how do we make it happen? She believed that collective wealth was power. And so she built an institution to create it. And she went to the members of the community and said, hey, they won't even take your money at that bank. And here's the thing. A lot of times I imagine back then, let's set the context for the time frame again. And I'm doing this on purpose because I want to, this woman she founded her bank in 1903. Do you all know what it takes in the United States of America to start a bank? Security Exchange Commission. Do you know the amount of paperwork that she had to go through? See, these stories don't talk about the prejudice and the racism that she had to overcome just to get the paperwork, let alone convincing people to put money in the bank, but just to get the paperwork, just to make sure that she could actually call herself a bank without being arrested. I think we forget that. And by 1903, she had done it. I don't want to erase all the work she had to do, the conversations she had to have, the amount of money she had to raise in order to make this thing happen. What I do know, it took vision and focus. Because, by the way, this woman was born to former slaves in Richmond, Virginia. Her parents were slaves. And see, I think sometimes what happens to us is like, man, if I can just, get a nice home in the south suburbs with a luxury car, we living. I mean, after all, look where we came from. And I'm not, no shade. Like, I ain't putting no shade on that. But I think one of the things that's hindering us is our lack of vision. Walker understood the value of money as a young child. She was doing work as a laundress at the age of 14, and she would watch her mother count pennies at the kitchen table. And she was like, okay, there's a certain value to money. But what if my mama's pennies were combined with her friend's pennies, combined with her friend's pennies, like now we have economic power. She saw something. And when the mainstream banking system was saying no to black businesses, keep in mind, they were saying no to black businesses. So do you think Philip Payton Jr. could just walk into a bank in New York and say, I want to buy that building? Like, do you get where I'm going? Today, 2025, if you have halfway decent credit, you can get somebody to give some money to you. And most of us will be like, oh, look at what's happening. Oh, it's so tough being black. Whew, man, help me. So at a time when you couldn't even walk into a bank to put your money up, they didn't want your money. They didn't want your greenbacks. This woman is saying, how about we do it ourselves? 1903, she founded the St. Luke Penny Savings Bank, became the first woman of any race in the United States of America to charter a bank. I want you to get this. This is one of the reasons I'm bothered by how things happen in the United States of America. When other banks failed during the Great Depression, Walker's Bank survived. Smart management. She wasn't playing the game. But here's the other thing. She couldn't play the game they were playing because they wouldn't invite her to the table. And so when they all failed, she was winning. Sometimes when they're not inviting us to the table, they won't let me in. They won't promote me. They're prejudiced. They're racist. And God is just like, I'm trying to protect you. Focus on the vision. Focus on the purpose. 1 century later, that bank is still around. And it's called Consolidated Bank and Trust, the oldest continuously owned, operated, black-owned bank in America. We don't got many. Hers is still around. I hope this is firing you up this morning. I believe vision doesn't just serve you, but it creates opportunities for others. Like the vision that I have, the vision the Creator gave me, it doesn't just serve me and my family. I believe there are people, because they get exposed to how God has blessed us, they see something different. They see something bigger. They're like, wait a second. I'm going to tell you something, man. Or they can hate. They can be like, but then that's all you're going to see is more hate. That's what you're going to create. Or you can be like, wait a second. I like that. I want to be around that. I want to build that. How can I get closer to that? Booker T. Washington said, success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome. What do you need to overcome? What do you know has been in your way It's been in your way for a long time. And it's time for you to push past it. It's time for you to push past it. So the next one is Jeremiah G. Hamilton. This brother was a Haitian immigrant. And he's the first black millionaire in New York City. And he built a $250 million fortune in today's money. $250 million fortune in today's money. And he did this in the early 1800s. I just want you to... Here's what's happening in the United States of America in the early 1800s, y'all. Okay? In the early 1800s, European immigrants are flooding New York. I really want you to understand what's going on, okay? An Irishman can barely get a good job, let alone a black man, okay? Because back then, they don't tell you this, but they had class, they would break it down by classes. So the Irishman was like the bottom, then the Italian was next, and it's like you had to be a certain type of European. So, just to be black, I want to give you some context, because sometimes we be thinking like we going through stuff, and I'm not saying that you're not, but I think a lot of it has to do with how you view it. Has a lot to do with context. So Jeremiah G. Hamilton hides in a fishing boat, escapes from Haiti, hides in a fishing boat, shows up to white-dominated Wall Street in the early 1800s. Early 1800s. And he sees opportunity. Man, Shirley Chisholm has this quote. If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Jeremiah G. Hamilton brought his folding chair to Wall Street. So you don't have to give me a seat, but I'm still going to sit down. I'm still going to learn what y'all doing to make this money, to get this guap. See, some of us get mad. They won't let me in. They were like, when I did come in, they ignored me. It's like, but we're getting seats, though. Man, we just focused on the wrong things. We focused on the wrong things. This is 1828. He's on Wall Street in the 1830s. And then you have the Great Fire of New York. Look up when the Great Fire of New York is, because I want complete context. So he's there during the Great Fire of New York. By the way, most of these major cities have fires. You have the Great Fire of Chicago, the Great Fire of New York, which is why you have concrete and steel buildings today, because it was all wood and, messy, and streets were full of squalor, horses riding, walking down the street, dropping. It was just bad, nasty. What does it say? Great Fire of New York. When was that?
They have one in 1776 and 1835.
So 1835. So now it's 1835. And this is important because it was 1828 when he came. So 7 years later. So he comes to New York broke in 1828. 7 years later, he has $5,000. So you know what that tells me? That he wasn't spending his money on the latest suit. Right? So he could fit in. He wasn't spending his money on the best boots, because I'm sure they mostly wore boots and things like that back then, right? On the best boots. In 7 years, this is a big deal. How much is $5,000 in today's money? How much is $5,000 in today's money back in 1835? Look that up. Because I want us to, most of us well, if I didn't have all these bills, well, you have all those bills because you're making bills. You have all those bills because you have spending habits. You have all those bills because you lack vision, and when you lack vision, you lack discipline. Whoo, man. I hope y'all, by the way, this is with love. This is with love. 1835. How much is $5,000 in today's money? $5,000. That's a big deal. $5,000 in 1835 is a big deal. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, it's thinking. All right. Yeah. It's analyzing. Okay. All right. Let's see what it has to say. What does it say? What is the equivalent of that? 148,000. So saving, I want you. This man shows up to New York broke. 7 years later, he saves the equivalent of 148,000. $5,000 in 1835 is like saving $148,000 today. Don't tell me what you can't do. Don't tell me what you can't do. So this man saves up $148,000 in today's money. See, because when you say $5,000 in 1835, people be like, oh, that's cool. Nah. I want you to understand what every dollar meant in 1835. This man saved up the equivalent of $148,000. Why? Because he was waiting on opportunity. He had vision. The Great Fire of New York hits, burns everything down, and then he takes that $5,000 and starts buying up property. Opportunity. Waiting on opportunity. He could have had the baddest horse, the best hat. You know, they wore nice hats back then. Instead, he's like, nah. And by the way, I doubt he could put this money in a bank. So he couldn't talk about it. He couldn't show it. He had vision. He had vision. He had vision. Whew. Man, if this ain't firing you up, I don't know what will. So he builds this financial empire, right? He builds this financial empire. And by the way, this is a time when most black entrepreneurs were stuck serving, other black folk. Right? You couldn't, white, because again, if you were Irishman, you couldn't get a regular European into your restaurant. Like, I want you to really understand what was going on in the early 1800s. Okay? So Hamilton, at a time where black entrepreneurs could only serve black customers, what he does is he goes straight to white-dominated Wall Street, like, I'm going to get this money. Creates $148,000 in today's money, $5,000 in 1835. Begins buying up properties and making deals that earned him the nickname, the Prince of Darkness. He waited, and I imagine people lost everything in the fire. And here's this black man shows up, because he's buying it from white folk, right? They lost everything, and he was like, man, I'm sorry about what happened, and I see your folks, they ain't really helping you. I'm sure the insurance companies probably weren't paying out. He said, but I tell you what I'll do. I'll give you $100 for this lot. And I imagine back then a white man would look around, they needed something. $100 is a lot of money. How much is $100 in 1835? Look it up. And by the way, I'm making this up. This is how I see it going. As a businessman, this is how I see this going, right? Walks up to the white man. He says, hey, man, I know you need some money and nobody's helping you out. And I know you don't want nobody to see me do this, but I can help you. The white man don't have, everything's burnt up. His family needs somewhere to go. How much is $100? $2,000. $2,000? Yeah. Right. So then 500 is 10,000, right? Okay. So he might be like, I'll buy this lot for $500. I'll take it, all the wood, everything burnt up. I got you. They look around. I can see them look around and say, you got it? I got it. Where's the deed? I can see the white man going, signing his name to it, giving him the deed, taking the $500 and walking away real fast. Nobody saw it. People start figuring out what he's doing. They're like, Jeremiah's buying up everything. They called him the Prince of Darkness. How does he own the block? Who let him do that? Vision. Vision. And then get this. He becomes so wealthy that he was able to take on Cornelius Vanderbilt himself. If you don't know who the Vanderbilts are, go ahead and get on Wikipedia and look it up. Vanderbilt, Cornelius Vanderbilt. And he didn't just compete with the richest man in America. He went toe to toe. They were trying to take control of the accessory transit company, proving that no opponent was too big. And they battled it out for years. That's the kind of money this brother had. I can imagine Vanderbilt. The reason y'all don't know about him is because the Vanderbilts had a trust and they had family. And I imagine the Vanderbilts made it their business for us to not know about Jeremiah Hamilton in school. They like, no, you can't know that a black man did that. They can't know. They can't know. They disliked this man so much that an angry mob showed up to his house in 1863. By now, he's an older man. And he got money for real. They can't stand him. I imagine they can't stand him. And by the way, I also imagine that now it's time. Now it's time to, have the Patterson vehicle driving down the New York streets in the Patterson. They like, oh, I can't stand this guy. Even got an expensive car. You know what I'm saying? How are we going to get him? They tried to lynch him. They couldn't do it. Annie Turnbow Malone. Annie Turnbow Malone. Let's talk about her. Before there was a Madam C.J. Walker. See, I don't know why we don't talk about some of these stories. I love this, and I love the context of it. Because here's someone else, the late 1800s, early 1900s, who made a huge difference. So, Annie Turnbow Malone was born to former slaves too in 1869. And a lot of folks will say, well, Nell, you don't know what happened to me. You don't know how I grew up. Here's a young lady. Her parents died when she's young. She's orphaned. She's got poor health. She can't play outside with the other little girls because of her health. And so instead, she stays inside, and she has this remarkable mind for chemistry. And she takes what she understands about chemistry into creating a hair care formula for black women, because she notices that the products that are currently on the market for black women is destroying their hair. Well, we can't have that. Black women want to look beautiful too. And so she decides to begin creating her own hair care formula that's called Wonderful Hair Grower. And Malone hits the streets and she's going door to door. Let's just pause right there. See, what happened with some folks, they'll create the hair grower and they'll give it to their friends. And they'll be like, what do you think? They'll be like, oh, it's all right. Or it's, it's okay. And they'll want everybody to come to them. Well, tell people, nobody's coming. They'll have all their inventory. Nobody's coming. Nobody's showing up. I guess it's no good. This woman walking down the street, I imagine she had a bag. And by the way, this stuff ain't light because they ain't had plastic back then. It probably came in tin. She got a bag full of tins, and she's walking, and they clink, 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 clink. As she's walking heavy, walking up to doors, putting that bag down, saying, hey, here's what I got. Door to door. She work a city, sell as much as she could in the city, go to the next city. A woman. And then she didn't just sell the product. She would educate them. So I imagine that however much it costs, $1, $2, then she spend the next hour talking to them. This is how you need to use it. This is how you take care of your hair. This is what you need to do. By the way, if you want to sell the product and teach too, then let me teach you how to do it. Before you know it, she's scaling. By 1920, this woman has built a multi-million-dollar business, a multi-million-dollar empire. And she's employing over 75,000 women all over the world. Global. In the early 1900s, there was no internet. Man, there was no, social media stories. This is my hair product. Now it's like nobody's watching, nobody's viewing, give up. And here's the part they don't teach. Malone's success didn't just support her, it lifted entire communities. I want you to think about the type of money that is now coming, 75,000 women, the type of money that's coming into households, the type of money, and now this is a black-owned product for black women, for black people. And then they also said she paid her employees the highest wages in the beauty industry. Paid them good. Funded scholarships. Donated millions of dollars to black educational institutions. How much spending power do African Americans have in 2025? I believe it's like 2.5 trillion. I guess I just think about this stuff differently. I guess I think about it differently. But how much spending power do we have as the African American community in the United States of America? Because we they may not fund HBCUs anymore. What are we going to do? Oh my goodness. Versus saying, you know what? I need to step up as an entrepreneur. I need to step up. Between 1.7 trillion and 2 trillion? Mm-hmm. Okay. So 1.7, by the way, that's what's documented. So between 1.7 and $2 trillion African Americans have. Now I want you to ask something else. What countries have a $2 trillion GDP? Ask that. And where do they rank in connection to other countries in the world? What countries have a $2 trillion GDP, and where do they rank to other countries in the world? Ask it that. See, I want you all to see something here. It's about how we think. It's about how we think. It's not just about making money, you all. It's about making a difference. It's about vision. It's about vision. What does it say? Hey, can you turn on his mic? Make sure his mic is on. What does it say?
We have Italy, Brazil, Canada, and
wait.
Russia.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold up. And where do they rank on the global scale? Where does Italy rank on the global scale?
8.
Number 8.
Mm-hmm.
And Italy is at 2 trillion?
Yep, 2 trillion.
So hold on. Back up. The economic spending power of the African American community in the United States of America is 1.7 to $2 trillion. And that is equal to the GDP of Italy. Run 1.7. Maybe I'm being too let's knock it back 300 billion. Okay? Let's say 1.7. Let's go low end. Low end, where does African American spending power rank in terms of countries? See, because y'all understanding where I'm coming from with this? Are you all getting am I beginning to make sense here? What does it say?
Mexico.
Where's Mexico ranked?
12.
Mexico's ranked number 12. Mm-hmm. Mexico has $1.7 trillion in GDP and gross domestic product.
Yep.
We have 1.7 trillion dollars in spending power, which is matched to Mexico at number 12 in the world. Yep. In the world. I hope your mind is spinning right now. If the African American community operated like a nation, on the low end, we'd be operating like the country of Mexico. On the high end, at 2 trillion, we should be operating like the country of Italy. The country. The country. That's how much collectively. That's our spending power. Oh, man. I almost want to end the show right there. Just drop the mic. Like, are you all getting this? I don't know, really, if these pioneers, if these African Americans in the early 1800s, in the late 1800s, in the early 1900s, if they can create what they created back then, if these pioneers built legacies and the obstacles they had to navigate, what's stopping us? It's time for us to step into our vision. It's time for us to take control of our future, and it's time for us to stop waiting for permission to succeed. We got everything we need. We got everything we need, and I promise you the only reason we don't have it is because we're not focused. I'm going to tell you something. Like, we've got to get to a point where we understand our economic power. We got to get to a point where we understand how wealthy we are as a people. Even if you feel like you're financially struggling, you are, in terms of how you're moving, far more wealthy than most people in the world. 8 billion people in the world, and most of us are living lavishly in comparison to how other people live in other places of the world. All you got to do is get out and travel. I think that's one of the other things we gain from that perspective of going to Ghana. And then when I look at what some of our brothers and sisters did in the early 1800s, building wealth up to 250 million in today's money, in the early 1800s, late 1800s. I mean, there's just, if anything, it has me asking myself, man, how do I take it to the next level? And what I really love about what we did this year, we shared 6 different paths to success, right? I wanted to, because sometimes we talk about the same people. And it's like, no, I want to talk about people we don't talk about. I want to talk about entrepreneurs. I want to talk about folks who had unsurmountable odds and still created powerfully. Philip Payton Jr., who basically forcefully integrated Harlem, right? Started buying up property, and then they started running, and he started buying up more property. He had to be, when it came to how he financed things, like, even now with the wealth we have, why aren't we buying up blocks? When what happened to our schools a few years ago under Emmanuel, like, oh, what's happening? Like, we're at effect of these things versus saying, no, that's not how it's going to go. Let's buy up these blocks. Let's take over these schools. Like, we have to have a different focus and vision if we're going to win. Maggie Lena Walker, organizing communities' wealth. I think there's also a lack of trust. And then for the people we do trust, we pick and choose when we trust them. I'm thinking back to the post-election show. Many of you all have listened to me for over 10 years, over a decade you've been listening to me. And then when times get difficult, you can't hear me. when I'm like, hey, watch how you feel. Watch where you place your emotions. You don't understand. This is horrible. And it's like versus saying, well, hold on. This brother has been a voice of reason. Like, this is a place I can place my trust. And I tell you all the time, double check. Make sure I'm telling you what's true. Hold me accountable. But at what point will we actually say, man, this is something I can trust? Whew. Our chapter in history is still being written, 2025. And the question is, what will our legacy be? What will our collective legacy be? And it comes down to the personal question of what will your legacy be? More importantly, will you take the leap? Will you take the leap of purpose? These are people who we know because they took the leap of purpose. I don't have to go into the difficulties. I did the best I could to paint the picture of the world they lived in. It wasn't easy. It never will be. But we have it easier. Today, my family, we can live in a neighborhood that I can tell you, man, 100 years ago, couldn't live in that neighborhood. Last night, my wife and I went to a restaurant that 100 years ago, we couldn't go to that restaurant. Walk around, not have to look over our shoulders, be worried about someone running up on us, who, by the way, if they knocked us over the head, wouldn't be held accountable. That should give us the space to create strategies and visions to take it to the next level in the way in the next decade. The Chicago South Side and West Side could be unrecognizable. I think we focused in the wrong areas. We've been focused on what will they give us. What I'm saying is now we need to be focused on what are we taking? What are we taking? Take back your neighborhood. Take back your schools. Take back your children. It's time to take. And if anything, Black History Month in 2025, when you remember this, I hope that's what you remember. What vision am I casting? And what am I taking back? Thank you for watching Inspirational Perspective. If you love this show and you want to see more content like this, you can go right here. And if you like this subject and you want to see much more content that we have available for you, just click the button here. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to watch the show live, 7 a.m. every Sunday morning on WVON Radio, or you can catch it right here on YouTube or Facebook.com/Coach Liddell Harris. Be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so we can get more content just like this to you.